My girlfriend manipulated me for years, racking up debt, then mocked my efforts, so I emptied her world and she lost everything. I never thought a single brunch conversation would completely restructure my life, but here we are. The morning started like any other Sunday with my girlfriend Sarah, and ended with me discovering just how deep someone's disrespect could run when they thought you'd never fight back. Sarah and I had been together for almost 4 years, living together for the past 18 months. I'm 28, work as a network administrator for a mid-sized tech company, and she's 26, working part-time at a high-end boutique downtown. On paper, we looked like any other couple navigating their late 20s together. In reality, I'd been slowly transforming into someone I didn't recognize. The financial dynamic had shifted gradually over our relationship. What started as me picking up dinner tabs and covering date nights had evolved into me handling rent, utilities, her car payment, insurance, phone bill, and pretty much every other expense except her shopping habits. Sarah contributed maybe $800 a month from her boutique job, which barely covered her personal spending. I told myself this was temporary, that we were building something together, that love meant supporting each other through different seasons. Looking back now, I can see how carefully orchestrated this transition was. It started with small things during our first year together. She'd forgotten her wallet at dinner, so I'd pay. Her car needed repairs right when rent was due, so I'd cover it temporarily. Her hours got cut at the boutique, so I'd help with groceries. Each instance seemed reasonable, even noble. I was being a good boyfriend, stepping up when my partner needed support, but temporary became permanent so gradually that I didn't notice the shift. The forgotten wallet became an expectation that I'd always pay. The car repair became me taking over her car payment entirely. The reduced hours became her working part-time by choice, while I shouldered all the real expenses. By year 2, I was paying for everything except her personal shopping, and even that often ended up on my credit cards when she'd overspend her own money. The psychological manipulation was subtle but effective. Whenever I'd bring up the financial imbalance, Sarah would remind me that relationships weren't about keeping score. She'd point out that she contributed in other ways, like keeping the apartment clean and planning our social calendar. She'd make me feel petty for caring about money when we were building a life together. She'd cry and say she felt like I was treating her like a burden, which would make me feel guilty for even bringing it up. We were at Meridian Cafe with her friends Jessica and Amanda. The conversation started innocently enough when Jessica asked about our upcoming anniversary plans. I'd been secretly planning something special for weeks, researching romantic getaways within driving distance. Finally settling on a bed and breakfast in the mountains she'd mentioned wanting to visit. "Oh, Marcus is probably planning something super thoughtful," Sarah said, but her tone carried an edge I'd learned to recognize. "Last year he wrote me this whole heartfelt letter about our relationship. Sweet, I guess, but you can't exactly show off a letter to anyone." Her friends laughed, and I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. I remembered writing that letter, staying up until 3 a.m. trying to capture everything I loved about her, about us. I'd written about how she made me want to be better, how her laugh could turn around my worst days, how grateful I was that she'd chosen to build a life with me. She'd cried when she read it, told me it was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for her. She'd kept it on her nightstand for weeks, rereading it before bed. "That actually sounds really romantic," Jessica said, glancing at me sympathetically. "Romantic, sure," Sarah continued, "but I'd been dropping hints about this gorgeous necklace at Tiffany's for months. Instead, I got notebook paper and feelings." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "Like, at least try to understand what I actually want, you know." The necklace she was referring to cost $2,400. I'd looked at it online multiple times, trying to figure out how to afford it. Between covering all our living expenses and her various emergencies, I barely had $200 left over each month. I'd been saving for 6 months to afford the mountain getaway, setting aside $50 here and there when I could manage it. Amanda jumped in with her own relationship complaints about her boyfriend not understanding her hints about designer bags. And suddenly, I was sitting there listening to Sarah catalog my failures as a boyfriend. How I dressed too casually for her taste, wearing the same rotation of button-down shirts and khakis, instead of the trendy clothes she'd screenshot from Instagram. How I preferred staying in and cooking together instead of going to expensive restaurants where she could post photos of artfully plated food. How I played video games with my friends on weekends instead of taking her to networking events where she could meet influencers and expand her social media presence. Then came the comment that changed everything. And don't even get me started on how he handled his dad's heart attack last month. Like, I get that it was scary, but he was crying at the hospital and calling me every hour for updates. It was honestly exhausting being someone's emotional support system 24/7. That last comment hit like a physical blow. The table went quiet for a moment. My father had collapsed at work, and I'd spent 3 days in the hospital waiting room while doctors tried to stabilize him. Sarah had visited once, for about an hour, and spent most of that time on her phone. When I'd called her for comfort during the worst moments, she'd seemed annoyed at the interruption. "Sarah, that's pretty harsh," Jessica said quietly. "His dad was in the ICU." Sarah waved her hand dismissively. "What? I'm just being honest. He knows I don't sugarcoat things. That's what makes our relationship work, right, babe? I keep it real instead of pretending everything's perfect." I looked at her sitting there in the designer dress I'd bought her for her birthday, wearing the earrings I'd surprised her with last month, criticizing me to people who were supposed to be our friends. Something crystallized in that moment. This wasn't the first time she'd publicly diminished me. It was just the first time I'd really heard it. "You're absolutely right," I said, standing up. "You're just being honest." She smiled, thinking she'd won some kind of victory. "See, he gets it." "And honestly," I continued, "you're being incredibly disrespectful, and I'm apparently too sensitive to tolerate disrespect anymore." Her smile faltered. "Babe, sit down. You're making this weird." "No, I'm removing myself from a situation that's become weird. Enjoy your brunch." I placed enough cash on the table to cover my meal and walked out. Behind me, I heard Sarah's nervous laugh. "He'll be back. He's just being dramatic." I drove home with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The apartment felt different as I walked through it, seeing everything through new eyes. Sarah's designer handbags lined up on the dresser I'd bought. Her skincare products covering the bathroom counter, easily $300 worth of serums and creams. Her clothes taking up 3/4 of the closet space, including pieces still with tags that she'd bought and never worn. All of it funded by my salary while she worked part-time and contributed almost nothing to our shared expenses. The reality of our financial arrangement hit me like a cold wave. I pulled up my banking app and started calculating. Rent, $1,800 a month, all me. Utilities, $200 average, all me. Car payment, $450 for her car, all me. Insurance, $180 for both our cars, all me. Phone bill, $120 for our family plan, all me. Streaming services, $75 across various platforms, all me. Groceries, $400 a month, mostly me. Gas, $200 a month, split between her car and mine, mostly me. I was spending nearly $3,500 a month on shared expenses, while Sarah contributed her $800 part-time income toward her personal shopping and occasional dinner contributions. I was subsidizing her lifestyle to the tune of $2,700 a month, over $32,000 a year, while she mocked my efforts and called me basic. I spent the next hour making phone calls that would change everything. First, I called my credit card companies. Sarah was an authorized user on 2 of my cards, with spending limits that had gradually increased over the years. The first card had a $5,000 limit, the second had $3,000. I removed her from both accounts immediately. The representatives were professional and efficient, confirming the changes would take effect within an hour. Second, I logged into our cell phone plan. Sarah's line was an add-on to my account, something I'd set up when we moved in together to save money. Her phone was the latest iPhone, which I'd bought her for Christmas. I removed her line and changed my account password. Third, I went through all our shared streaming services. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Apple TV, Spotify Premium. I changed every password. These might seem like small things, but they added up to nearly $80 a month in services she used constantly but never paid for. Fourth, I reviewed our living situation. The lease was in my name only, something that had seemed practical at the time since I had better credit and income. I wasn't going to kick her out illegally, but I started researching the proper procedures for ending our cohabitation. In our state, I'd need to give her 30 days written notice. The whole process took about 90 minutes. Then I sat back and waited, feeling lighter than I had in months. The first call came at 2:23 p.m. I was organizing my gaming setup, something I'd barely touched in months because Sarah complained about the noise when my phone started buzzing with Sarah's contact. I let it ring. The text started immediately. My card got declined at Nordstrom. What's going on? Hello? This isn't funny, Marcus. Pick up your phone right now. 23 missed calls in 2 hours. Then her friends started reaching out. Jessica texted, "Hey, Sarah is freaking out about her cards. What happened?" I replied. She said I was too sensitive. Turns out she was right, I'm too sensitive to keep paying for someone who publicly humiliates me. Look, she was wrong to say those things, but cutting off her cards seems extreme. I removed her from MY cards, there's a difference. Amanda tried a different approach. You really canceled her phone over a brunch conversation. I removed her from my phone plan. She's welcome to get her own. That's financial abuse. Financial abuse is controlling someone's access to their own money. What I did is called boundaries. The distinction was important. Financial abuse involves controlling someone's access to their own resources, monitoring their spending, or preventing them from working. What I'd done was stop voluntarily subsidizing someone else's lifestyle. Sarah had never contributed to these accounts, never paid the bills, never even offered to split the costs. She'd simply enjoyed the benefits while contributing nothing. By 4 p.m., Sarah was home. I heard her key in the lock, then her heels clicking across the hardwood floor with increasing urgency. "What did you do?" she demanded, storming into the living room. "I took your advice about being too sensitive," I said calmly. "I removed myself from situations that hurt my feelings. You canceled my phone, I couldn't even call an Uber. Jessica had to drive me home. Sounds like you have a good friend. Maybe don't insult her boyfriend next time." She started pacing, her designer heels clicking against the floor. "You can't just cut me off like this. I have appointments this week, I have plans." "Better figure that out then." "I can't afford to," she stopped herself, caught in the admission. "Can't afford what, Sarah? The lifestyle you just spent an hour mocking me for funding." Her face went through a series of expressions: anger, panic, calculation. Then she tried a different approach. "Baby, I'm sorry, I was just venting with the girls, you know how it is." "I do know, that's exactly the problem. I'll make it up to you, whatever you want. What I want is for you to move out." Silence filled the room like a physical presence. You're breaking up with me? Over brunch. I'm breaking up with you over 3 years of taking me for granted, culminating in you publicly humiliating me while I was planning to propose next month. The color drained from her face. Propose? Past tense. The ring goes back tomorrow. The engagement ring had been another source of financial stress. I'd been saving for 8 months, putting aside every spare dollar to afford the one. 5-carat solitaire she'd not so subtly pointed out during a mall visit. The ring cost $4,200, representing months of sacrifice and careful budgeting. I'd planned to propose at the mountain getaway, somewhere private and meaningful rather than public and Instagram-worthy. That evening, Sarah locked herself in the bedroom making phone calls. I could hear her voice through the door, spinning the narrative. I was controlling, abusive, had cut her off for no reason, but Jessica had been at that brunch, she'd heard everything. The next morning, Sarah emerged dressed for work, acting as if nothing had happened. "I need gas money," she said without looking at me. "No, how am I supposed to get to work? The same way everyone else without a sugar daddy does. Figure it out." She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. 20 minutes later, the text started again. "Car won't start. Battery's dead. I need AAA." Here's something she'd forgotten. I'd been paying for the AAA membership too. It was one of those automatic renewals that I'd added years ago and never thought about. Canceled that along with everything else. "Can't help you." "Are you serious right now?" She missed her shift. Her manager called me. I was still her emergency contact, asking where she was. "Sarah no longer lives here," I told him. "You should update your records." That afternoon, I started documenting everything. Screenshots of our text conversations, copies of bills and receipts, records of all the accounts I'd removed her from. I had a feeling I might need evidence of the actual situation versus whatever narrative Sarah was constructing. By evening, Sarah had gone full victim mode on Instagram, a series of stories. When you realize you were dating a narcissist. Financial abuse is real, ladies. Starting over from nothing, but at least I'm free. The comments were mixed. Her shallow friends bought into it immediately, posting heart emojis and "you deserve better" messages, but Jessica had apparently reached her limit. She commented, "Girl, you literally spent an hour at brunch mocking him for writing you love letters instead of buying you jewelry. This ain't it." Sarah deleted the comment within minutes, but Jessica posted her own story. When people rewrite history and you were literally there, the friend group imploded. Screenshots started surfacing in group chats, people taking sides. Turns out I wasn't Sarah's first victim. Her ex-boyfriend David had gone through something similar 2 years ago. Jessica's boyfriend reached out to me with David's contact information. "Bro," David texted when I called him, "I've been waiting 2 years to watch Karma catch up with her." David filled me in on his experience. Sarah had done the same thing to him, gradually shifting all financial responsibility while contributing nothing. When he'd finally had enough and tried to have a conversation about it, she'd publicly humiliated him at a party, calling him cheap and unambitious in front of all their friends. When he broke up with her, she'd launched a social media campaign painting him as abusive and controlling. "The crazy part," David said, "is that she actually convinced me I was the problem for a while. Made me think I was being unreasonable for expecting a partner to contribute equally. It took months of therapy to realize I wasn't crazy." 3 days later, Sarah's mother called me. Linda and I had always gotten along well. She was a reasonable woman who'd raised Sarah as a single mother after her father left when Sarah was 12. "Marcus, honey, what's going on? Sarah says you've lost your mind." "Did she tell you what happened at brunch? She said she made a little joke and you overreacted." I sent Linda screenshots of some of Sarah's greatest hits from our text history, complaining that my promotion was cute, but when would I make real money? Calling my father's construction business embarrassing when Linda asked about my family. Saying the birthday gift I'd saved up for was only $300, what am I supposed to do with that? Linda was quiet for a long moment. I didn't raise her to be this way." "I know you didn't, Linda, but this is who she's become." "Marcus, can I be honest with you? I've been worried about Sarah for a while now. She's become so focused on appearances and material things. When she was younger, she used to be happy with simple things. I don't know where this came from. I think social media has a lot to do with it. She's constantly comparing our life to what she sees online. I understand why you're done. Can I ask you to reconsider? She's my daughter, but she's also spoiled and entitled, and maybe losing you will wake her up. I appreciate that, but no amount of potential growth is worth sacrificing my self-respect. I understand. You're a good man, Marcus. She doesn't deserve you." Linda's call gave me insight into Sarah's background that I'd never fully understood. After her father left, Linda had overcompensated by trying to give Sarah everything she wanted. She'd worked 2 jobs to afford dance classes, designer clothes, and private school. Sarah had never learned to appreciate what she had because she'd never had to work for anything. With the 30-day notice ticking down, Sarah started frantically searching for roommates on Facebook. Her posts were telling, "Urgent, professional female seeking roommate in upscale area, must be clean, quiet, respectful, no drama." The responses revealed her situation. "What's your budget? Flexible." Translation: broke, do you have first last deposit? Payment plans available. Translation: definitely broke, what do you do for work? Fashion retail specialist. Translation: part-time boutique employee. Someone who recognized her from the financial abuse posts commented, "Didn't you just post about starting over from nothing? How you gonna pay rent?" Post deleted immediately. Sarah's desperation became more apparent as the days passed. She started reaching out to acquaintances she barely knew, asking if they needed a roommate. She posted in every Facebook group she could find, each post becoming more desperate than the last. "Looking for temporary housing situation while I get back on my feet. Willing to help with cleaning and cooking in exchange for reduced rent. Just need somewhere to stay for a few weeks until my new job starts." The last post was particularly telling because Sarah didn't have a new job lined up. She was hoping something would materialize before her current situation became untenable. Within a week, Sarah was already soft launching a new relationship on Instagram. Posted a mysterious man's hand holding a coffee cup with the caption, Sometimes angels appear when you need them most. The hand had a distinctive tattoo that my friend Kyle recognized immediately. Yo, that's Brandon from the gym. Dude's a personal trainer who lives with 3 roommates and drives a 2008 Honda Civic. She'd gone from a network administrator to a struggling personal trainer in 1 week. The math wasn't mathing. I felt a mix of amusement and pity. Sarah was so desperate to prove she'd moved on to something better that she was already trying to replace me with someone who couldn't possibly provide the lifestyle she'd become accustomed to. Brandon was a nice guy, but he made maybe $30,000 a year and lived in a shared house with guys in their early 20s. Here's what Sarah didn't realize. I'd been building her credit for 3 years. As an authorized user on my cards with my perfect payment history, her credit score had been artificially inflated. When she applied for her own credit card, she was denied. When she tried to get her own phone plan, they wanted a $500 deposit she didn't have. The phone company representative explained that without established credit history in her own name, she was considered high risk. The irony was that she'd had great credit, but only because of my financial responsibility. Welcome to the real world, where credit scores matter and Instagram followers don't pay bills. Sarah's financial reality became clear over the following days. She'd never had to budget, never had to prioritize expenses, never had to make the choice between wants and needs. She'd been living like someone who made $80,000 a year while earning $15,000. The gap between her lifestyle and her actual income was unsustainable without someone else footing the bill. Late one night from a friend's phone, "Marcus, please, I know I messed up." I was showing off for my friends. "You know the real me, the girl who cried over your letter, who loved our quiet dinners together. Please don't throw away 3 years. I'll go to therapy. I'll apologize publicly. I'll do anything." For a moment, I felt the old familiar tug of sympathy. This was the Sarah I'd fallen in love with, the one who seemed vulnerable and genuine. But then I remembered that this version of Sarah only appeared when she needed something. Then, an hour later when I didn't respond, "Fine, be petty. You'll regret this when I'm successful and you're still basic." The whiplash was giving me whiplash. This was the pattern that had defined our entire relationship. Sweet and apologetic when she wanted something, cruel and dismissive when she didn't get her way. Sarah's manager called me again. "I'm sorry to bother you, but Sarah listed you as a reference for an apartment application. What should I tell them?" The truth, she lived here rent-free for 18 months and contributed nothing financially. Oh my, that's not what she told them. What did she tell them? That she paid half of everything and you're withholding her security deposit. There's no security deposit to withhold. She never paid rent. The manager paused. "Marcus, between us, she's about to be let go anyway. She's been taking merchandise home without paying. I thought you should know since she's using you as a reference." This revelation didn't surprise me. Sarah had a flexible relationship with other people's property. She'd borrowed clothes from friends and never returned them, taken food from work, and had a general attitude that rules didn't apply to her. A week later, I received an email from legaladvocate2024@gmail.com demanding $25,000 in damages for emotional distress, defamation, and interference with housing applications. The email was poorly written and clearly not from an actual lawyer. I forwarded it to my cousin Jake, who's a real attorney. His response made me laugh out loud. "This is written in Comic Sans font and sent from a Gmail account. No real lawyer would ever send a demand letter like this. Also, the legal theories are nonsense. You can't defame someone by telling the truth about your own financial arrangements." Jake offered to send a response explaining why their claims were baseless, but I decided to ignore it. Engaging with fake legal threats only encourages more of them. As Sarah's move-out date approached, her desperation reached new heights. She tried showing up with a U-Haul and random people she'd hired from outside Home Depot, claiming they were helping her move her belongings. "These are my friends here to help me move," she announced. I recognized none of them. "Tessa, none of this is yours. We live together. Half of everything is mine. Name one thing you purchased." She looked around frantically, pointed at the TV. "That TV." I showed the Best Buy receipt from 2021. "My name, my credit card. The couch. IKEA delivery receipt, also my name. The dishes. Wedding gift from my aunt to me." The workers looked uncomfortable. One older guy stepped forward. "Ma'am, you said this was your place and your ex wouldn't leave." "It is my place." "He's stealing from me." I showed him the lease with only my name on it. His whole crew left immediately, but not before one muttered something in Spanish that I'm pretty sure translated to "crazy lady." Sarah had prepaid them $200 she didn't have. The check bounced, adding another fee to her already overdrawn account. She called the police twice more, once claiming domestic violence and once claiming theft. Both times, the officers reviewed the documentation and told her she needed to stop filing false reports or face charges herself. "Ma'am, filing false police reports is a crime," the older officer explained patiently. "This gentleman has provided documentation proving everything belongs to him. You need to gather your personal belongings and leave." "This is financial abuse," Sarah protested. "Ma'am, removing someone from your own credit cards is not abuse. It's called breaking up." With 48 hours left, Sarah finally found a place some sketchy week-to-week rental that definitely wasn't up to code. Cash only, no questions asked. Perfect for someone with no job prospects, no credit, and no references. When Sarah came to collect her belongings, she was shocked to find I'd moved everything to a storage unit. "Where are my things?" she demanded. "Your clothes and personal items are in storage unit 247. Here's the key. You have 30 days before they auction it off." "Storage? You put my belongings in storage. I legally stored abandoned property. You're welcome." The storage facility was 40 minutes away and cost $75 a month. She had negative money in her bank account. Her friend Jessica, who'd driven her over, looked at me with what might have been respect. "Damn, Marcus, that's cold." "It's practical. I'm not running a free storage service." 2 weeks after Sarah moved out, I was cleaning out some old boxes when I found something that changed my entire perspective on our relationship. Hidden in a folder with old bills, I discovered a notebook in Sarah's handwriting. It was dated from about 6 months into our relationship, and it was essentially a strategy guide for getting me to pay for everything. The entries were chilling in their calculation. "M paid for dinner again tonight without me asking. Need to start forgetting wallet more often. Told M my hours got cut. He offered to help with rent. Perfect. M is so guilty about money stuff. If I cry when he brings up expenses, he backs down immediately. Need to make M think the financial stuff was his idea. Men like feeling like providers." The notebook contained a detailed analysis of my personality, my weaknesses, and how to exploit them. She'd identified that I was generous, conflict avoidant, and had a strong need to be needed. She'd systematically used these traits against me. One entry from about a year ago was particularly revealing. "M is getting suspicious about money. Need to make him feel bad for caring about it. Will tell him real relationships aren't about keeping score. Also should probably have sex more often when he brings up bills." Reading this felt like discovering that someone had been studying me like a lab rat. Every moment of our relationship that I'd thought was genuine affection was actually calculated manipulation. 1 month later, I ran into Jessica at a coffee shop. She updated me on Sarah's situation. Sarah was living in the sketchy weekly rental with 3 roommates she'd met on Craigslist. The place was exactly as bad as it sounded: water damage, questionable electrical work, and neighbors who played music until 3 a.m. She was working at a call center, the only job that didn't check references. The work was soul-crushing, dealing with angry customers for 8 hours a day at minimum wage. She'd lost all her belongings when the storage unit got auctioned off. She'd tried to raise money through a GoFundMe, claiming she was a victim of domestic abuse, but the campaign had raised only $73 from people who didn't know the real story. She was still posting about starting a lifestyle coaching business, with 0 clients. Her Instagram had transformed from carefully curated luxury lifestyle content to inspirational quotes about overcoming adversity. The comments section had become a wasteland of fake positivity and MLM recruitment attempts. Brandon, the personal trainer, had lasted exactly 2 weeks before realizing he couldn't afford to date someone with champagne tastes on his beer budget. He'd broken up with her via text after she'd suggested they go to an expensive steakhouse for their 3rd date. Meanwhile, I was thriving in ways I hadn't expected. The financial relief was obvious. I was saving over $2,500 a month, but the emotional relief was even more significant. I'd forgotten what it felt like to come home to peace instead of criticism. I'd forgotten what it felt like to make decisions without worrying about someone else's judgment. I'd started dating Rebecca, a librarian I'd met at a coffee shop. She was the opposite of Sarah in every way that mattered. She was genuinely interested in my thoughts and feelings, not just what I could provide for her. She appreciated small gestures like bringing her coffee or cooking dinner together. She had her own interests, her own income, and her own sense of self-worth that didn't depend on external validation. I'd started seeing a therapist to process the relationship and understand why I'd accepted such treatment for so long. Dr. Martinez helped me recognize the patterns that had made me vulnerable to Sarah's manipulation. "You have what we call a fixer personality," she explained. "You see someone struggling and you want to help them. That's not a bad thing, but it becomes problematic when someone takes advantage of that instinct." She helped me understand that my father's work ethic had instilled in me a belief that love meant sacrifice. I'd grown up watching my dad work 2 jobs to support our family, and I'd internalized the message that providing for others was how men showed love. "The problem," Dr. Martinez continued, "is that you never learned to distinguish between someone who was genuinely struggling and someone who was choosing to struggle because they had someone else to catch them." Sarah had never been in actual need. She'd been in artificial need created by lifestyle choices that exceeded her income. But she'd presented her situation as if she were a victim of circumstances rather than the architect of her own financial problems. 3 months after our breakup, I received a message from yet another new number. "Marcus, I know you hate me, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I didn't appreciate what I had. You were the best thing in my life and I destroyed it for Instagram likes and fake friends. I'm in therapy now, court-ordered after the false police reports. I see how toxic I was. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I understand now. You deserved better." I didn't respond, but I noticed she'd sent it from what looked like a flip phone. The iPhone I'd bought her had apparently been cut off or sold. The message felt genuine, but I'd learned not to trust my instincts when it came to Sarah. She'd been convincingly remorseful before, always when she needed something. Real change takes time and consistent action, not just words sent from a desperate place. Looking back, the signs were always there. The constant criticism disguised as keeping it real. The way she'd mock my efforts while benefiting from them. The entitlement that grew stronger every time I failed to set boundaries. The way she'd rewrite history to make herself the victim whenever consequences appeared. The hardest part wasn't the breakup itself, it was realizing how much of myself I'd lost trying to be enough for someone who fundamentally didn't value authentic love. I'd transformed from someone who wrote heartfelt letters to someone who measured his worth by how much he could spend on someone else. I'd learned that love without respect is just exploitation with better marketing. I'd learned that someone who truly cares about you won't mock your efforts, especially not in public. I'd learned that financial compatibility isn't about making the same amount of money, it's about having the same values around money and contribution. Most importantly, I'd learned that I'd rather be alone than be with someone who made me feel alone while they were sitting right next to me. 6 months later, Rebecca and I were cooking dinner together in my kitchen. She was telling me about a difficult patron at the library while I made my grandmother's pasta sauce recipe. It was the same recipe Sarah had called basic and something you can get anywhere. "This is incredible," Rebecca said, tasting the sauce. "You could open a restaurant." "It's just pasta sauce," I laughed. "No, it's not. It's love in food form. You can taste the care you put into it." That moment crystallized everything for me. Rebecca saw the love in my simple gestures because she valued love over luxury. She appreciated the effort because she understood that effort was how I expressed affection. She didn't need me to prove my worth through expensive gifts because she valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. We'd been together for 4 months, and she'd never once criticized my clothes, my hobbies, or my way of showing love. She'd never made me feel like I wasn't enough. She'd never made me question whether my best efforts were worthy of appreciation. That night, after Rebecca went home, I found the old notebook where I'd written that letter to Sarah. I read it again, remembering the man who'd written those words with such hope and vulnerability. That man had been worthy of love and respect. He deserved someone who would treasure his words instead of mocking them. I wrote a new letter that night, but this one was to myself. An apology for accepting less than I deserved, and a promise to never again fund my own disrespect. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't Sarah's current struggles. It was my current happiness. It was learning to value myself enough to walk away from anyone who didn't see my worth. It was discovering that the right person would appreciate my handwritten letters, my home-cooked meals, and my authentic expressions of love. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them experience life without your support. Sarah learned more about gratitude in 3 months of real-world consequences than she did in 3 years of me enabling her behavior. Now, when I see couples where one person is clearly taking advantage of the other's generosity, I want to shake them and tell them what I learned. You're not too sensitive for demanding respect, you're not asking for too much when you want appreciation, and you're not obligated to fund someone else's lifestyle while they publicly humiliate you. Life's good when you stop funding your own disrespect. Life's even better when you find someone who would never ask you to.